Hi, I'm Kaylee, and today I'm reviewing Planet Narnia by Michael Ward. This is a book that I've had on my TBR for quite a while. It's a nonfiction book about Narnia, analyzing the Chronicles of Narnia. One of my goals this year is that every month I want to read a C.S. Lewis or a J.R.R. Tolkien related book. And so for this past month, it was Planet Narnia. Before we dive into my review of Planet Narnia, I'm gonna reach back here to our Booktuber Shoutout book, and we're gonna shout out somebody randomly. Today's shout out goes to Miriam Elizabeth Reeds. I will leave a link to their channel in the description, so be sure to go over there and subscribe to them. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to this channel and give this video a like if you love the Chronicles of Narnia like I do. And be sure to follow me over on Twitter and Goodreads and Storygraph and Instagram and all the places. The full title is Planet Narnia: The Seven Heavens in the Imagination of C.s. Lewis. There is an underlying theme that connects all of the Chronicles of Narnia, influencing the tone of each story, the roles that the characters play, and the imaginative elements of each plot. This thread that is woven through the entire series is the medieval mythology of the cosmos. And that is a subject which fascinated C.s. Lewis. So the seven medieval planets and their respective deities represent particular characteristics and particular philosophies and ideas, which are the foundation of the Narnian stories. In Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, we have Jupiter, the deity of the hunt, of kingship, and of revelry. In The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe, they do go on a hunt at the end of the book. They're all crowned, once a king or queen of Narnia, always a king or queen of Narnia. And of course, there's the wonderful post-resurrection revelry that Susan and Lucy go on with Aslan. There are a ton of other details in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe that show that Jupiter and his characteristics and his themes are a main part of that book. In Prince Caspian, we have Mars, the god of war and of the sylvan woodland. In Prince Caspian, it's all about the war, but also a lot of it takes place in the woods. It's all about reawakening the trees and everything. So it's not just the violence of Mars, but it's also the peacetime Mars, which is more about the beauties of the woodland. In Voyage of the Dawn Treader, the god is Sol, or the sun, the deity of gold, fire, and lizards or dragons. And in Voyage of the Dawn Treader, I feel like this one is really, really obvious. It's Sol, the sun god, Apollo. So there's a lot of imagery of gold and fire and very brilliant light. And of course, this is the one where we see a lot of dragons. Apollo apparently was the lizard slayer or something like that in one of the Greek myths. And so we have a lot of dragons in Voyage of the Dawn Treader. In the Silver Chair, it's Luna, the moon, the deity of boundaries between worlds, and unfortunately insanity, and silver and water. So I did not know this, but Luna is the first boundary away from the earth. So that's the goddess of boundaries between worlds. So the first world that we see in Silver Chair is England, then we have Aslan's country, then they go to Narnia, and then they go down into the underground, and they even get to see the lower underground of Bism, and then they go backwards up into the underground, and then into Narnia, and then back to Aslan's country, and finally back to England. So there are definitely this theme of boundaries between worlds in the Silver Chair. Luna is also the goddess of silver, which we see a lot of in the Silver Chair. And the goddess of water, which comes up a lot, especially there's that underground sea that they have to cross. And the goddess of insanity. So it's when they're underground and the evil witch is trying to convince them that there is no Narnia and there is no Aslan and there's no such thing as the sun. That's when they start to descend into insanity and they have to find their way back. In The Horse and His Boy, we have Mercury. This is the god of theft, of language, of swiftness, and Quicksilver, and sort of by association, the god of twins. In Horse and His Boy, they do a lot of thieving. They're running across the country, trying to escape, and there are a lot of descriptions of the different things that Shasta steals. He even steals his, unbeknownst to him, twin brother's identity for a little while. He's also the god of swiftness, and at the end, Shasta is told to run and keep running. And there's this whole thing that I really don't have time to explain about Mercury and Castor and Pollux, the stars, which of course are the twins. And so there's a whole thing about Mercury and the twins. And then in Magician's Nephew, we have Venus, the deity of femininity, of familial love, original temptation, think of Eve in the garden. Although we only see her in one scene, the love that Diggory has for his mother really permeates the whole story. It's kind of the whole point of the whole story. Because this is the creation story, we also see Aslan creating the animals 2 by 2 and then telling them to love one another and to propagate the earth. With Venus, we of course also have the imagery of Eve and that temptation in the garden and the apple and everything. So obviously that is a big theme in Magician's Nephew too. But Venus is also the goddess of laughter. And there is a lot of laughing in Magician's Nephew. Is it the raven or the jackdaw or one of the birds tells the first joke. And Aslan says, you didn't tell the first joke, you were the first joke. And then finally in the last battle, we have Saturn, the deity of death and destruction and sorrow and time. There is a lot of death in the last battle. Even deaths that are off screen, as it were. We hear about every Narnian at the capital has been murdered. A lot of characters die. Everybody dies in this way. All of Narnia is destroyed. This is also the god of time. And at the very end of the world, it's Father Time who rises up as a giant out of his sleep and heralds the end of the world. But on the other side of that destruction and sorrow, everything is made new, and they begin their next adventure. I could go on and on forever with all the really cool details about how these particular themes, these particular ideas that are centered around these Greek and medieval gods and how that plays out in each of the Narnian stories. I might have to do another video just talking about all those cool details, but for now I just want to give a basic review. So I really loved that this book has an extremely scholarly foundation. There are lots of quotes and letters and references and an extremely large section of notes and index and bibliography. Here it is. So this whole last part of the book is just the index and all the notes. It is just full of proof of all the little details of the author's findings. I have to say, I started out very skeptical that anyone had really found some secret code in the Chronicles of Narnia. But I was quickly convinced of the truth of the author's premise. The scholarship here is just so very thorough. However, this book does not read like a boring doctoral thesis. I found it very readable and easy to follow. It's full of funny anecdotes and interesting stories about C.S. Lewis. And there are many clever insights, not just into the Narnia series, but in Lewis's other works, and especially his space trilogy. I just loved diving in to all these interesting details of the Narnian characters and their personalities and how that's reflected in the overall themes. The first chapters go into some basic background about Lewis, his education, his scholarly interests, and how he was fascinated with medieval philosophies about cosmology. The main focus is on the influence that these Greek ideas had on medieval literature in the characteristics that the deities represent. So obviously Lewis and medieval scholars didn't actually believe that the Greek gods were real, but that they were representations of ideas in human history. And then in the middle of the book, each of the deities is brought forward in their own chapter with sections about their influence on literature and especially on Lewis. And then we see how the most prominent characteristics and roles of those deities actually point back to Christ. And we see their influence especially in Lewis's space trilogy and in some of his poetry. And in the final section of each chapter, we bring all those threads together into Narnia, showing how the characters, the plot, the settings all revolve around the characteristics of this deity. It's all about that central theme, a planet deity from medieval philosophy. And then the last chapters explain some more about the possible writing process that Lewis would have used to create this structure for his Narnia stories. And it talks about how the author himself, Michael Ward, first began to realize that this was a hidden theme connecting all of Narnia. And there are also some guesses as to why Lewis thought it was so important to keep this theme a secret, even until his death. There's kind of an exploration about, well, if you see the influence clearly, does it still have the same kind of influence on you as when you were just enjoying it unawares? It's the shadowy influence that is in the background which has the most effective impact. Lewis believed that hidden things in literature were way more powerful than the things that were clearly seen on the surface. I especially liked that all these ideas of the planetary deities were always brought back around to Christ. It really becomes more of a study in Christology, how the person of Christ brings to fruition these different characteristics that we associate with the Greek deities. The author, Michael Ward, is a Christian, and I really liked how he brought that to the forefront. And he showed how Lewis kept Christ at the center of the Narnia stories, not just in the person of Aslan, but also in the personalities and characteristics of other characters, and even the settings as well. I found this entire book absolutely fascinating. I will never read Chronicles of Narnia the same way ever again. It is amazing how every little detail in the Narniad supports this theory. I'm absolutely convinced there is an overarching theme following the structure of the planetary deities. Even when a character just randomly exclaims, "By Jove," it has a special meaning now. So mostly I listened to the audiobook narrated by Nigel Patterson, and I really enjoyed it. And this paperback copy that I have has some of the illustrations from Pauline Baines that demonstrate crucial points in the plot. And it also has some pictures or photos or of paintings and things showing the Greek deities. So this one is Jupiter, and here's Luna with her horse-drawn chariot, and here's Saturn, the god of death. I will leave a link in the description where you can purchase this for yourself, and there's also a website called planetnarnia.com where you can go over and find out more about this very cool hidden theme in the Chronicles of Narnia. I gave this 5 stars. This is so fascinating. Please leave me a comment down below and let me know, have you ever noticed any little details in the Chronicles of Narnia that seems like that means something more, but I'm just not sure what. And leave me a comment and let me know, what is your favorite book from the Chronicles of Narnia? Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and remember, the right book in the right hands at the right time can change the world.